Hey, everybody. Okay, before we get started, it's going to be a fun one. Couple things. Don't do any super chats today because I want to just pick things out of the chat. I don't want necessarily have people pay for that. I'd just rather just look at the comments and see what people are saying. So feel free to leave your comments. I know most YouTubers don't say don't leave super chats, but that just gives people unfair access to having their things be read. Okay. I'm just going to go quickly through my 4 dates that I'm going to be doing. Sweden, Stockholm, Sweden. We're in the month now. July 22nd at the Södra Theater. There's a few tickets still left. Would love to see you there. Please come out. Atlanta, Georgia, September 28th, the Variety Playhouse. This is going to be a special one because I'm going to have a bunch of special guests related to people that have been in my videos that live here. So that's going to be kind of a different one than any of the other ones. September 28th, Variety Playhouse. All these are in the description below. New York City, the Gramercy Theater. If you live up in New York, this will be my second time there and probably last time. And then Berlin, Germany, October 28th. That one is selling really well. Get your tickets. That's at the Passionskirche, October 28th in Berlin. Never been to Berlin. I'm really excited about these. And honestly, I'm pretty much not going to do any more live shows. If I had to say this right now, this will be it for my live performances. So there you go. I don't have any grand design. I love being on YouTube. It's far better because I can sit here and talk to people all over the world and ask questions like, what would music be today? Imagine it with no internet. Okay, I'm glancing over the comment section. What would music be like with no internet? Okay. What is music like today compared to when the internet really came into full force, which was the late 90s, essentially? Internet was around before then, but really the late 90s. With the big transition year, you would have to say, being the year 1999 when Napster came out, 2000, which was the height of sales, height of revenue for major labels. They had labels that made $1 billion of profit in a year. One label, I think it was Zomba that did. That had NSYNC and Britney Spears and all these huge artists that were Backstreet Boys, all in the same label, all having diamond records, 10 million records, right, in a year. Insane. So what has happened since the internet? And then we'll discuss kind of where things are at, okay? Actually, let's do it this way. Let's talk about the before the internet. There were no social media platforms, right? Like this. All music was controlled by major labels, large independent labels, and production companies, right? Producers. Dr. Dre, think of all the people. Snoop Dogg, Eminem, all the people that Dr. Dre, 50 Cent, signed and made huge. And there's many producers that made big records. By the way, I'm running my Beato bundle sale through July 4th. I forgot to mention it at the beginning. That's all 4 of my courses for $99. Instead of putting money in the super chat, get my course if you can afford it and become a better musician. That's way better than spending money to have me read one of your comments here. JG says, no internet, no Rick Beato YouTube page. Exactly. I will come to that point. So all music was controlled by majors, indies, production companies, and people that had resources to make recordings. Both the point of entry and who gets promoted, they were relying on things like local scouts. Every big city, doesn't matter whether it's here or over in Europe, had a local scout for a major label. Warner Brothers had a local scout here. They had one in New York City. They had one in Nashville. They had one in LA. They had one in Seattle. They had one, in Dallas. Then they had them in London and Paris and wherever. Berlin. All major labels had multiple scouts everywhere. Okay. Then those local scouts reported to a hierarchy of A&R people. Lower level, which would be the scouts. Mid-level, which would not be the head of A&R. Then you have the head of A&R. Then you have the label president that would ultimately have the say of every single person that would get signed, every artist that would get signed. It was fascinating doing these interviews. I had Christopher Cross in this week, and he talked about sending in a demo tape. You'll see it in the interview. He sent a demo tape to somebody that was a marketing rep that he knew the name of. I'm turning my light up there. And had he sent it in, and then it got handed to the head of A&R. What was he on, Warner Brothers? I haven't edited the interview yet, but it got to the head of A&R, and he got signed because he accidentally sent it to the wrong person who gave it to the head of A&R. Okay? It was just luck. Okay, but he had recorded this on his own with pros. These demos were done with pros. And Christopher Cross got signed in 1980. First records came out December 20th, 1979, but really not till the beginning of 80. Okay, so gatekeepers were record labels, bands that had large followings, investors or producers with production companies. And I gave you the example of Dr. Dre. Here's the thing is that distribution, this is really what the labels had. And this is what things like YouTube has, Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, Apple Music. This is how people get heard. But specifically, it's more difficult to get on Spotify and Apple Music than to get on TikTok or YouTube. Because frankly, you can just put things up and do that. And the algorithms are what takes people from being unknown to being known. And in some cases, massive awareness of someone that has virtually no footprint in the music business prior to that. Okay. More on this distribution thing. The lack of gatekeepers, right? This is kind of the pros and cons of it. The lack of gatekeepers makes it nearly impossible to find things of quality. Okay, so the people at the labels really did, that was the service they provided, and the A&R scouts. This band has a huge local following. There was a band called Holly Faith that was from Atlanta, that my friend Rob, who passed away a year and a half ago, I made a video about. He was the lead singer of Holly Faith that could draw 2,000 people to a show before they got a record deal. That's a lot of people in a local market, and they could do it in multiple markets. Many artists have massive local followings, or had. They got signed by Epic Records. I think it was Epic Records. Was Holly Faith on Epic? I can't remember. Somebody in there knows who Holly Faith was on. Somebody said we wouldn't have Justin Bieber. Justin Bieber got known through YouTube. Jake, somebody mentioned Jake on here. Jake, Jvke, because of TikTok. It wasn't just Jake making these things on TikTok. It was people sharing them. Okay. So this lack of gatekeepers, I'll come back to instances like that and some of the technical things involved with that, like phones, okay, and the internet, being able to instantly take things that are really well filmed, where you can stitch your music in, you can play along with things, or you can simply dance to a song to 15 seconds, 30 seconds, a minute, 3 minutes, whatever it is, and make videos that go viral and that people share, all of them doing their actual other, dancing and reacting to songs that are popular. They get billions of views. The lack of the playlists have become really popular, taking the place of radio stations. Now, we haven't talked about radio. How does radio play into there? Well, radio used to do two different things. Radio stations would play things that were presented by majors and indies. If you're college radio stations, you would play things that were on indie labels. SST, Sub Pop, Matador. There's many different huge indie labels that were big in the 90s, in the 80s, that would get played on college radio. Bands like Nirvana came up through college radio with Bleach on Sub Pop, and then moved to the major labels. After selling 46,000 copies of Bleach, they got a major label deal with DGC or Geffen. And they got signed in 1991 and did their record with Butch Vig, and the rest is history, of course, right? So playlists now have become, and playlisting can either be people like, for example, Alison Hagendorf, who does the Rock This playlist for Spotify. So it can be an individual person that came up through record labels or through the music industry, and they are the ones that are programming the stations. Or you can have indie playlists that are just by regular people like me or whoever, that have essentially served the function of what radio stations do. And there are people that have massively big playlists, millions of followers, because of their ability to curate music that people like. People follow these playlists because they like the music on them. Now, many playlists that become really huge are bought by big companies. Okay, they can be bought by Spotify. They can be bought by whoever. Apple Music, doesn't matter. Playlisting's not as big on Apple Music. It's not really as much of a thing as it is on Spotify. And then you, of course, have platforms, SoundCloud, Bandcamp, and all the different platforms that are beyond the huge platforms that I'm talking about, Spotify and Apple Music being the biggest. You have these other platforms that for independent artists. Okay, so these individual playlisters are music curators, just like people that work for these big companies that are curators. But the thing is that every platform has a distribution algorithm, I guess we could call it. People call it on YouTube, people refer to it as the algorithm. But the algorithm is really the recommendation engine, okay? If I watch a video and I send it to a friend of mine, and I send it over Gmail, YouTube knows that, okay? Or if I send it through an app, if I forward something, I forwarded there's this insane guy drumming, playing super fast metal with one hand when he's drinking coffee, and then he does something else, and I forget what he's doing, and then he switches hands, and he's playing these incredibly fast, insane stuff. So I forwarded that to a bunch of my friends. Well, once Instagram sees that I forward that, they start recommending it, especially, and I don't know this for a fact, I just assume this is the way it works. If I wrote the recommendation algorithm, if somebody that has a big platform, I have 650,000 followers on Instagram. And if, by the way, you should follow me on Instagram. If you don't, Rick Beato 1 or at Rick Beato 1 on Instagram. When they know that, or when people that have big followings comment on your Instagram post, it gives it more weight. I don't know that for a fact, but it's got to be how it works, because that's the only way I could explain how most people that have a lot of followers, you'll see in the comments section, people that historically had blue check marks on Instagram. Now I think anybody can get one. I don't know if that's true or not, but I think it's easier to get them than it used to be. It used to be very difficult to get one. I didn't get mine until I had 300,000 followers on there. I didn't get my YouTube check mark verification until I had 2 million followers. Even though there were people that I guess must have had connections or something, and they got their check marks earlier on. But when somebody forward something like that, it adds more weight to how the videos are getting recommended, I think. Somebody on here, Richard Harris writes, Rich Harris writes, Clear Channel is a gatekeeper. Well, yeah, so there are gatekeepers inside of gatekeepers that used to be. So on radio, you had Clear Channel, you had Cumulus. Those were two massively big companies that came about after the 1996 Telecommunications Act that Bill Clinton signed, where the whole consolidation, I've made videos about this, consolidation of the music industry happened, of all media happened, to me, for the worse, okay? Because essentially you took all these independent stations and these huge companies would buy up all these stations. And then they'd get one person to program them. And then all that power would get consolidated to that one person that would be creating the playlist every week. Okay, here's what we're going to add. And I mean, this would be pretty corrupt stuff. Okay, so there are indie promoters that used to get paid, I forget what it was, $3,000 for an ad per song if a new artist got added. And then the stations would pay these indie promoters. I'm not going to name them, but there were people that would be independent promoters. This is in the 90s when they made payola illegal. So they would just pay independent promoters to get that controlled the playlist of stations. Okay, so you might have an independent promoter that have 150 rock stations, one person that would get paid from each one of these stations or the station owners to do their playlist every week. And then you had the major labels paying them per ad. Anytime they got a new ad, they would pay them three grand or whatever it was. An insane amount of money. Crazy. Okay. This is the way the music industry used to work. It was still payola, my cousin Janine just said, except more money, less mob. Right, exactly. So it was just the way they shifted it to get ahead of where the laws were at the time, right? Pretty funny. And it took money. When I had a number one country song, the only number one song I ever had as a songwriter, it was commonly known, and this was told to me by a friend of mine that's been an independent record promoter and worked at a major label for over 40 years. He told me that a hit song, to get a number one country song at the time, this is in end of 2013, would cost at least $500,000 to pay all the people you needed to pay. Okay? If a song lost its bullet, meaning if it's going up and it gets less spins, combined spins in a week, let's say you get 1,000 spins in a week, and the next week you come in and you get 999 spins, you've lost your bullet and your song is done. Unless they really come in and pay even more money to people. And then you're still only getting overnight spins, meaning they're playing your record. You're paying these independent promotion companies, or the labels are paying these indies, and it's only to get a spin at 3 o'clock in the morning, which does nothing. To get daytime spins, you have to keep going up. Is Nuno really in the chat? Let's see, Nuno, are you in there? That's not true. I don't believe it. I hope Nuno's in there. If you are, Nuno, you're the best. I'm telling all the Nuno knows all this stuff if he's out there. So, so because of this, there's so much money that was involved. So you had people. Then you'd have. Let me go back to this about radio stations. Certain radio promoters had the power to break your record at certain stations. K-Rock in Los Angeles. If you got an ad in the 90s on K-Rock, you had a hit record, or you had a chance to have a huge hit record. Ultimately, the audience decides by putting their money there. They just do it. That's Leslie Fram here at 99X in Atlanta. This is really from the labels that sprung up in the early 90s that were called alternative labels that happened basically around Nirvana and grunge during that thing, and lasted through the 90s into the early to mid 2000s. K-Rock though was the most powerful station. Stations in a lot of the major markets were really powerful. When it hit the late 90s, you had stuff, active rock, that was heavier rock. These would be bands like Linkin Park or Korn or Limp Bizkit or whoever. And then you had stations, active rock things that would pop up in big cities, like in Orlando, that would be JRR in Orlando was a big active rock station. We actually didn't really have an active rock station in Atlanta, surprisingly. But there were active rock stations that were in big media, big media markets that were out there that with that format. And then you'd have people that would be the indie promoters for those things too. Okay. All right, let's go back to what has happened because of all this. And I'm going to say it again here. If you haven't subscribed here, if you're a new listener or if you're a first-time watcher, hit the subscribe button now. I've got 4 shows coming up. Sweden, Stockholm, Sweden, July 22nd this month. Atlanta at the Variety Playhouse. Definitely come to that one if you live anywhere near here or fly down here. That's going to be a big show. New York City, the Gramercy Theater, October 17th, and then in Berlin on October 28th. I'm probably not going to be doing any more shows after this. I'm gonna most likely retire after that. So if you want to see me live, that's the time to do it, unless you run into me at a show, which I try not to go out to anymore. Okay. And then we have our July 4th sale. I told people I wasn't going to answer any chats here. I said, don't put in super chats. I said at the beginning, GSS, thank you. My whole YouTube world is better because of Rick Beato. You're awesome. Thank you. But no more super chats. I don't want super chats. I'm just going to pick things from here. Okay. Let's talk about what's happened to the music, because what are the negative things that's happened in music? There's a feedback loop that happens because of social media. Seeing what's popular and making viral content quickly rather than doing deep artistic work. Okay, dances, challenges to make songs go viral, things like that. When I say take more work, Boston's first record took years to make. Tusk, Fleetwood Mac, 5 years to make. The Black Album, Metallica, and Randy Staub, I worked with Randy a year and a half, something like that. Records took a long time. Daniel Lanois, Peter Gabriel So, Joshua Tree, these things went on for a year. Records took a long time. You ask Nuno, those extreme records, like a fast record would be 4 months, typically. 5 months, 6 months. Hysteria, somebody just put in the chat. These things went on forever. And art needs time. That's in the chat. I'm reading from that. How has music deteriorated since the internet came about? This is an important question. Here are some of the things. It's far simpler. I'm generalizing here, everybody, but it's far simpler. You don't find Frank Zappa's. You don't find Steely Dan's, really, that are popular. You don't find Gino Vanelli. I did a solo on my last video, Carlos Rios solo, that's just about impossible to play unless you have incredible chops and can play bebop licks. Harmony is less sophisticated now. I made a video talking about how many number one songs have a key change. From 1965 to 2009, 25% of songs had key changes in them. 25%, a quarter of all songs. Since 2009, these are number one songs. Since 2009, 0, I believe it is, have had key changes. 0. Songs have become less lyrically interesting. Not in rap necessarily, but it generally in pop music, no question about it. I'm talking music that's super popular. Okay, yes, oh, you can find esoteric examples of everything on here. Of course you can, okay? Songs are gridded to perfection, gridded and tuned to perfection, which they weren't, okay? If you go back, so that means things are quantized, meaning all the beats are equalized or they're played to loops or sampled grooves, okay? And they are at one tempo and they do not change tempo. And then things are auto-tuned to specific notes, right? Think of Drake. Drake can sing one note and then you can move it around and create a melody based on that. Matter of fact, auto-tune rewards things that are sung more out of tune because the closer you are to the pitch, the less it has to move it and the less noticeable the digital artifact is. That is a fact. Believe me, I've used auto-tune and Melodyne a million times to save records with people that I worked with that didn't have the budget and couldn't sing well enough to make a great take. Okay? That's a fact. This is why because there were no budgets, so people took the easy route. It was that with major labels because you had less money to make the records with. When I started producing, a typical record budget for a new band was $250,000, $250,000 to $350,000. A budget for a bidding war band was $750,000 or more. You'd have all that money to hire session players, strings, orchestrators, go to the best studios that had the best rooms, drum techs, guitar techs, all this stuff. Hire session players. Do you know how many records? You know the new drummer from the Foo Fighters is? Josh Freese? Josh Freese is on every record of the 90s just about. If he's thanked in there, Kenny Aronoff, Josh Freese, there's a few people. Matt Chamberlain, I can name them off. There's like 5 people that are on so many rock records. They just, because the guys couldn't cut it in the 90s. But by 2000, once you had Beat Detective, it was kind of like, you know what? We don't really have the budget to hire a session guy, so we'll just fix it in Pro Tools or fix it in Logic. Logic, you really couldn't do it very well in. You can now. We'll fix it and we'll just quantize their drum parts and then we'll loop it. We'll play 4 bars. This is why rock music, to me, it got incredibly boring once it became gridded. And almost every producer in the early 90s or in the early 2000s gridded their music. Mean they quantized it. Not Brendan O'Brien. He didn't. Look at Brendan O'Brien records. He recorded on tape till probably 2006, something like that. Yeah, they would cut the tape and take, just like Metallica did. Randy Staub and who's the producer? Bob. Who's the producer of Metallica Black Record? Randy Staub was the engineer. Bob, somebody's going to put it in here. But they would cut sections out. Bob Rock, thank you. Bob Rock, of course, right? They would cut sections out. Okay, we got a good first half of the verse. We're going to take the fill from here. And they would do it like that. Doing it like that is very creative, actually. You'd cut a section of the thing, you'd mark it with a grease pencil on the tape, use a razor blade, cut it diagonally, find the section. Hey, there's hanging on the wall over there this is literally how they would do it before you could do it digitally. On the wall over there is a great fill leading into the first pre-chorus. Grab that, take it off the wall, put it on the splicing box, put a piece of tape in the back, trim the edges, and play it. Connect both things, play it. Does that sound good? That sounds good. No, that doesn't sound good. Take that off, cut the thing off, take the splicing tape off, go grab that second fill from there, put that on. This used to take time to do this. It's amazing, right? Even to lay samples in, you could do that. And people are like, well, it's way easier nowadays. It is easier, but less creative. Less creative because it's so easy. Now you can just quantize it. 30 seconds, you do this and everything. People are like, oh, well, you can make the groove. You can make it a little bit off tempo. It's like, yeah, people don't usually do that. I've made many videos about this, about quantization. I made a video. This guy talked about how who was it? It was the funky drummer groove that the three brothers, the Jonas Brothers, did this song. And the guy from the New York Times said, this is the funkiest drum groove. It's like, it's not funky. I made a video about it. It's completely quantized. It's totally quantized, not funky. And I put Funky Drummer up, the James Brown tune that Clyde Stubblefield played, and I put it up there, and it's not perfectly in time. It has feel. But this thing that he was saying, this writer that was writing for the New York Times said this was a funky drum break. And I stretched it out, I cut it up, and I showed how you could change the tempo because it was gridded, meaning it was quantized, and you could easily just change the tempo. That to me is not grooving. Can you have grooves that are perfectly in time? Absolutely you can. But they usually require some type of dynamic change between notes that create feel. That's why all my favorite guitar players like Nuno Bettencourt or Pat Metheny or Brian May or you name it, they play every note is at a different, Julian Lange, all the people I interview, these great players, every note is at a different volume because volume changes in timbre between, if you have two different kick drum sounds, one that's a heavy sound on downbeats and an upbeats use a slightly different sample, timbre can create groove. Change of timbres between two different kick drum sounds can create, even in rap tunes, things that are quantized, you can have that. Okay? Tosin Abasi, perfect example of that. I had Tosin in here, I had John Petrucci in here. These guys they were playing together. Devin Townsend, all three of them played together last week. I haven't put out the video yet. And we talked about this. Everything is different. Every note is different because they're all playing them with different techniques, right? And it humanizes this. So the lack of that, the tempo fluctuations and things like that are really, really important. Okay, then there's the shift. I'm going to jump around here. There was a shift from album-based listening to individual track streaming, which also influenced the depth of artistic exploration. Okay, people tried to have singles all the time. And the songs that were album tracks, that were really the best tracks on the record, you know, if I listen to Queen, Night at the Opera, I love Bohemian Rhapsody, but I really love the Prophets song. That's Brian's song. That's another epic track on there that has this incredibly long Freddie Mercury section, vocal a cappella section that's unbelievable. Unreal. So that was an important shift. And if you, so before the internet, no social media platforms, all music was controlled by labels, and I'm restating this for people that have just joined, by major labels, large indies, and production companies. The point of entry to who gets promoted is relying on the hierarchy of A&R, local scouts, mid-level A&R people, heads of A&R, and label presidents. So it was very hard to get to a record out into the marketplace, let alone getting a single. Okay, it was almost impossible to get a single. Album tracks were what sold the records and made them what they were. That's, to me, what made fans, were the album tracks. If you listen to, if you go to the first Police record, you had Roxanne, I Can't Stand Losing You, I think, but you also had Born in the 50s. You had Truth Hits Everybody. You had these incredible album tracks on there that really made fans of the bands. And I can name from Rush to whoever. You get any artist that you want to talk about. The reason that they had longevity is because of album tracks, how important that was. So the distribution model now through YouTube, now I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the internet. I wouldn't even be able to have this discussion with all these people. The lack of gatekeepers makes it nearly impossible to find quality, okay? You need the playlists actually serve an important thing. Algorithms actually serve because they come in place of radio stations, because people don't really listen to the radio that much anymore. And they come in place of the record labels, right? Because anybody has distribution. I can put my video out and people can watch it in Sweden. Why am I playing in Sweden? Why am I playing in Berlin? Because I can. Because I have a big channel. I mean, honestly, because of YouTube. Because you guys watch the videos and support the channel. By the way, if you want to support the channel, click on another thing now. I got my sale going through 4th of July of my Beato bundle. It's my ear training course, my Beato Book Interactive, my Quick Lessons More Advanced Guitar course, and my Beginner Guitar course. All 4 of those for only $99. It's like a $330 savings. Most people sell their courses for $150 for one. I'm selling all 4 for that. That's why I said don't donate in the super chat here, because I want to just pick things out here, because this is, I want it to be equal for people that don't, can't afford to put money in there for me to see this thing. I don't like super chat, honestly. I hate to say that. Just like when people complain about ads and videos. Yes, I get paid on the videos that are monetized of me. I get paid for that. But when people complain, I'm like, just get an ad blocker. Playlist move from the record label to indie promoter, individual playlister. Every platform has their own distribution algorithm. Okay. So a couple other things. CDs, tapes, and vinyl would possibly still be the primary distribution method without the internet. We don't know that. But reducing time, all these DAW platforms and Pro Tools came out with the Digi 001 in 1999, which happened to be when Napster was released, which happened to be the beginning of the downfall of the music business. It was when home recording actually really started in earnest, that you could become a producer of your own music, which I did, which is why I'm on here. Really, because DigiDesign came out with the Digi 001. That's why I'm here talking to you today, because I was able to edit digital audio, which enabled me to edit digital video, because you use the audio part of the video to know where to cut. But these things reduce time on experimentation. Anyone can make a song in two minutes nowadays. The immediate accessibility of new music today pushes artists to release music faster, at a faster rate than ever before. Meaning they don't spend time learning their instruments to get better, to become Nuno Betancourts, where you are virtuosos when you're making your first record. Look at Zeppelin 1. These guys were virtuosos, studio players, 2 of that, half the band. Unbelievable, right? You guys are the best. Put the comments in there. Hit subscribe now if you just came on this. Thank you for the super chat. For those of you that, even though you did it and I told you not to donate, but I appreciate it. You guys are amazing. Share the video with people. Love to know your comments here. Södra Theater in this month, in a couple weeks, the 22nd in Sweden, Stockholm, Sweden. I can't wait. I've never been there. I think Dylan broke his ankle today, but he's still going. Take him to the doctor now. Well, I'm taking him back to the doctor. Okay. You guys are amazing. Thank you so much for watching. Sale going on, 4th of July sale. Go check it out. Click on the other link. We'll see you guys later. Have a great weekend.